Redwater Den is a tactical deception located in the Rift. On the surface, it appears to be a simple forest cottage that appears to be ruined by the ongoing civil war, but it functions as a highly coordinated front for an underground narcotics and blood harvesting operation. The shack contains a trapdoor leading to a massive subterranean facility where dealers manufacture Redwater skooma. This specific variant is synthesized by mixing standard skooma with the tainted liquid of Redwater Spring. While the spring was originally sought after by the ancient vampire lord Venarus Vulpin as a fabled source of power, he discovered its properties were mechanically useless to vampires and purely destructive to mortals. Rather than abandoning the site, Vulpin exploited the spring's extreme toxicity to establish a self-sustaining ecosystem. The Redwater skooma is engineered to be significantly more addictive than the standard variety, serving as an extreme sedative. When a mortal consumes the brew, they black out and are subsequently moved into iron cages within the lower levels of the den. Due to this, the vampire gets an infinite amount of food. The den represents one of the few instances in the game where an NPC successfully identifies and weaponizes a biological flaw in the real world for their long-term survival. There is a recurring observation that foxes in Skyrim intentionally lead players to hidden treasures. While this behavior appears scripted, it is actually a byproduct of a game's AI pathfinding system known as the Polygon. Foxes are programmed with a simple flee script that triggers when the player approaches. To determine a flight path, the AI calculates the route that covers a specific number of polygon triangles. In the open wilderness, the polygon is sparse with very few triangles. However, locations with complex geometry, such as bandit camps, Nordic ruins, and hidden treasure caches, require a much higher density of these triangles to accurately map the terrain. When a fox attempts to put distance between itself and the player, its pathfinding logic naturally gravitates towards these high-density areas because it can satisfy its distance requirement measured in triangles more efficiently. So these foxes usually lead up to points of interest which consequently may not be a hidden treasure and can even be bandit camps as well, but it can still lead you to treasure if it happens to be nearby to the fox. The Great Forge at the Skyforge is lore established as the hottest flame in Skyrim, fueled by ancient magic and capable of forging legendary Nord steel. Mechanically, however, the game engine is indifferent to the legend. If you walk into this sacred flame, it deals the exact same environmental fire damage as a common campfire in a bandit gut trench. The Divine Heart is mathematically identical to burning trash. Furthermore, the heat is purely aesthetic. If you drop a frost salt directly into the center of the forge, it will remain there, frozen and clipping through the embers for as long as the cell remains loaded. The hottest forge in the world cannot melt a single decorative item. The Headman's Axe is a unique two-handed weapon wielded exclusively by Ata, the official executioner of Solitude. While its base damage of 17 is comparable to a standard iron or steel battle axe, its primary value lies in its weapon reach variable. The Headsman's Axe is the longest reaching melee weapon in the game. This mechanical advantage allows a player to land strikes from a distance that exceeds the range of an enemy's counterattack, effectively permitting a kiting playstyle with a heavy weapon. Beyond its range, the axe is contradictory to its weight. Despite its massive physical model, it weighs only 11 units, which is significantly less than the 20 to 25 units typical of other battle axes in its class. This makes it an exceptionally effective tool for stamina management during power attacks. Because the weapon lacks a pre-applied enchantment, it remains a clean asset that can be specialized with dual enchantment at higher skill levels. To acquire it, the player must locate Ata in the Castle Dura dungeon and complete his Radiant quest to eliminate a bandit leader. Once the quest is resolved, Ata can be recruited as a follower, allowing the player to trade for the axe, or he can be killed to loot the item directly from his corpse. The skeletal dragon is a unique encounter situated within the burial chambers of Labyrinthian. Unlike the dragons encountered in the overworld, Alduin did not resurrect this entity through his ancient shout. Instead, it is a fossilized remains reanimated by the necromantic influence of the dragon priest's Moroke. Consequently, the creature is not technically a dragon by dragon standards. It is physically incapable of flight due to the absence of its wings, and it possesses no dragon soul for the player to absorb upon its destruction. It is essentially a reanimated object rather than a living Dova. Also to note is that the skeletal dragon is the weakest dragon in the entire game. Because it is classified under the undead rather than dragon, it is susceptible to specific anti-undead mechanics such as turn undead spells and sun damage. While it possesses a frost breath shout, its lack of mobility and low health pool make it a cakewalk. Furthermore, the loot reward is non-existent. Standard dragons yield both scales and bones for armor crafting, but the skeletal dragon yields only bones. Defeating it results in a net loss for the player in terms of potential resource gain and shout progression, making it one of the most underwhelming high-profile encounters in the province. Grelod the Kind, the overseer of Honor Hall Orphanage in Riften, is a character whose name serves as a stark contradiction to her documented behavior. While her public role is to provide care for the orphans of the Rift, her internal management of the facility is defined by extreme physical and psychological torture. The most damning evidence of this is located within a side room of the orphanage, which functions as a rudimentary torture chamber. This room is equipped with iron shackles bolted to the stone walls and buckets placed beneath them, suggesting prolonged periods of confinement and isolation for the children under her charge. If her dialogues don't say enough,
"This is an orphanage, not an inn. Be gone from here,"
then the environmental storytelling says more than what the situation speaks for. Unlike other killable NPCs, Grelod has no defensive capabilities and her health is very low, signifying her status as a victim of her own reputation. The cruelty extends beyond physical restraints. Dialogue trees reveal that Grelog orders her assistant, Constance Mitchell, to verbally abuse and steal from the children, ensuring their spirits are broken. This pervasive atmosphere of abuse explains why the Riften guards show total indifference when the player executes her in broad daylight. Valian of Morthal is a master conjurer whose reputation amongst the townspeople is defined by suspicion and rumors of dear heart consumption. While he serves as the necessity for curing vampirism, his gameplay routine reveals a deeper commitment to the occult than most players witness. During the nighttime hours, Valiant's AI package directs him to leave his room and trek into Hjalmark marshes to a specific stone summoning circle. This is the same location where he performs the ritual to cure the player's vampirism. Yet, he visits it regularly, even when no such service is requested. If the player discovers him during these early hours, Valiant will attempt to bribe the player to ensure his activities remain a secret. This interaction is merely a flavor test. If the player rejects the bribe and reports the behavior to Jarl Idgrod Ravenkrone, Valiant is summoned to the Longhouse and formally threatened with exile. This confirms that the townspeople's paranoia regarding his sinister plans is grounded in an actual functioning NPC schedule. The Guardian Mudcrab is a unique spectral entity encountered during the quest Kind's Sacred Trials, which is initiated by the hunter Froki Wetted Bow. Found near Clarepine Lake, this creature is the first of several guardian spirits the player must defeat to earn Kind's favor. Visually, the Guardian Mudcrab is the largest living specimen of its species in the game, appearing as a massive translucent blue specter that towers over the player. However, this physical scale is entirely disconnected from its actual combat effectiveness. Mechanically, the Guardian Mudcrab is one of the most underwhelming boss encounters in the province. Despite its ghostly glow and intimidating size, its health and damage statistics are nearly identical to those of a standard low-level mudcrab. The Mythic Dawn Museum in Dawnstar contains a display case housing a single scorched page of the Mysterium Zarces, the Daedric tome authored by Mehrunes Dagon. Despite its historical significance as the primary catalyst for the Oblivion Crisis, the item possesses a unique and inexplicable mechanical trigger. If the player strikes the display case or the page itself with a weapon or spell, the artifact does not break or remain static. Instead, it instantly transforms into a common wooden bucket. This transformation is not a glitch, but a deliberate script intended to prevent the player from interacting with a high-value quest-related object that the engine cannot properly categorize as loot or debris. By forcing a model swap to a mundane item, the developers effectively neutralize the asset's magical properties while leaving a bizarre technical artifact in its place. The bucket possesses the standard weight and gold value of any other household container, making it completely worthless and useless. The standard utility of a follower is often relegated to equipment transportation, but their programming includes a specific logic gate for tactical self-preservation. When an NPC's health pool falls below a scripted threshold, which is typically around 50%, then their combat AI temporarily suspends offensive maneuvers to check their internal inventory for restorative consumables. If the follower is carrying any item with the Restore Health effect, they will immediately consume it to replenish their HP. This automated behavior allows the Dragonborn to outsource the burden of healing during high-intensity combat, removing the necessity of manual spellcasting or constant menu navigation to use healing hands. However, this system operates without a hierarchy of need. A follower will utilize a rare extreme healing potion to mend a negligible amount of damage if it is the first item checked in the inventory. To maintain economic efficiency, the player must curate the specific quality of potions given to their companions, as the AI will indiscriminately expend valuable resources regardless of the severity of the wound. Solitude is geographically defined by its placement atop a massive stone arch, a feature that typically forces travelers through a single heavily guarded main gate. However, a secondary obscured access point exists for players who navigate the industrial district below. By crossing the bridge located directly above the East Empire Company warehouse and following a narrow unpaved path along the cliffside, the player can locate a mine-style door built into the rock face. This door will directly lead the players to another entrance in Solitude. The AAA Delete When Done Test Jeremy Cell is a hidden internal map file that was utilized by the development team to test the game's ability to scale character models in real time. Unlike standard interior cells designed for gameplay, this environment was designed to test two NPCs, Test Jeremy Small and Test Jeremy Big. Both characters are unarmored and lack any standard AI combat packages, as their presence is strictly limited to the execution of a specific model scaling script. This script is activated when the NPC interacts with a smelter placed within the cell. As the animation plays, Test Jeremy Small is programmed to shrink in size, while Test Jeremy Big increases in scale. This functionality suggests that Bethesda was testing dynamic height adjustments, potentially for spells, staves, or environmental hazards that either were discarded or relegated to background mechanics. Ironically, even with the explicit Delete When Done instruction in its title, the cell remained in the final master file. Skyrim's NPC AI includes a priority script for high-value items detected in the immediate environment. If the player drops an object with a high gold-to-weight ratio, such as a diamond, flawless gemstone, or piece of enchanted jewelry, within a crowded urban cell, nearby NPCs will abandon their scheduled routines to claim the object. When multiple NPCs attempt to claim the item simultaneously, the interaction script can escalate from verbal arguments into physical combat. Depending on the NPC's specific faction settings and their relationships with the game's social hierarchy, these disputes often become lethal. Because these brawls are triggered by environmental item interaction rather than a direct assault by the player, city guards frequently fail to intervene or assign a bounty, essentially classifying the violence as a localized civil dispute. Isolde is initially presented as a wholesome, ambitious merchant in Whiterun, frequently discussing her goal of purchasing the bannered mare from Hulda. However, her financial strategy involves the illicit distribution of sleeping tree sap, a narcotic substance regulated similarly to skooma. This hidden enterprise is confirmed within Sleeping Tree Cave, where the player can locate the corpse of an orc named Ulag. Ulag carries a formal letter from Isolde that details their logistics for harvesting and trading the sap, explicitly linking her to the province's criminal underworld. When the player confronts Isolde with this evidence, she does not express remorse for her associate's death or attempt to deny the allegations. Instead, she immediately offers to recruit the player to replace Ulag in her supply chain. This interaction unlocks a permanent trade mechanic where Isolde acts as a fence, purchasing sleeping tree sap for a fixed price of 150 gold per unit, a significantly higher value than what standard merchants offer. Zephyr is a unique dwarven bow located within the ruins of Arkandalms, a site accessible during the quest Lost to the Ages. The weapon is found at the extreme end of a fallen log extending over a massive chasm, the exact location where the adventurer Katria fell to her death during an earthquake. Mechanically, Zephyr is distinguished by an innate permanent enchantment that increases its draw and fire speed by 30%. Unlike traditional enchanted weapons, this effect does not consume soul gem charges, making it a reliable tool for sustained combat. The primary utility of the bow is its superior damage per second. While heavier bows like the Daedric or Dragonbone variants deal higher single-shot damage, Zephyr's rapid-fire capability allows for a higher volume of arrows in a shorter window. This makes it particularly effective in mid-range skirmishes, where staggering an enemy with volume is more critical than a single stealth multiplier kill. Because the draw speed is a fixed attribute of the weapon's internal data, it stacks with the quick shot perk in the archery skill tree, resulting in the fastest possible fire rate achievable for a physical bow in the game. The mechanical efficacy of the speech skill can be significantly enhanced through a specific sequence of religious and social interactions. By visiting a shrine of Dibella found in major urban centers such as Markarth, Solitude, and Riften, the player receives the Blessing of Dibella, which applies a fixed +10 bonus to the speech attribute. This blessing functions as a religious active effect, modifying the player's ability to haggle with merchants and succeed in persuasion attempts for a sustained period of 8 in-game hours. This effect can be further compounded by the Gift of Charity, a separate active effect triggered by donating a single gold septim to any NPC designated as a beggar. This charitable interaction adds another +10 points to the speech skill for 1 hour of in-game time. Because these two bonuses occupy different effect categories, one religious and one social, they stack cumulatively rather than overwriting each other, resulting in a total +20 increase to the speech skill. This combination is particularly useful for bypassing difficult persuasion barriers in major quest lines or for acquiring better barter prices without the immediate need to invest perk points into the speech skill tree. The Trio of Revelers is a random encounter consisting of 3 intoxicated NPCs who invite the player to share a drink. While most players provide standard ale or mead, the encounter contains a specific negative response script tied to Black Briar Mead. If the player offers this specific brand as the primary product of the Black Briar family in Riften, the Revelers will immediately break their friendly persona to criticize the beverage's quality. This dialogue reflects the commercial rivalry between the Honing Brew and the Black Briar Meaderies. The Revelers describe the Black Briar product as vile and swill, contrasting the law-established notion that Maven Blackbriar's mead is a superior high-status drink. The adoption system in Skyrim is governed by a background script that tracks the parental status of every child NPC in the game world. While the Hearthfire expansion provides several predefined orphans, the system is designed to be reactive to the player's lethality. If the player executes the parents of a child who does not have an assigned backup guardian, such as a specific aunt, uncle, or family friend, then the game engine executes a relocation sequence. This script removes the child from the original home cell and places them into the Honor Hall orphanage in Riften, provided the player has already killed Grelot the Kind. This process effectively creates a loophole where the player can manufacture their own candidates for adoption. Once the child is registered within the orphanage's internal list of adoptable actors, their previous witness data is largely superseded by their new orphan status. This means that a child who may have watched the player murder their family in a farm or stable can within 24 hours in-game be adopted by the same player without any scripted hostility or recognition of the crime. The player can then bring the child into their own home, providing them with toys and an allowance, completing a cycle that is technically efficient as it is ethically void. The mechanic serves as a safety net to ensure the player never runs out of potential children to adopt, regardless of how many civilian households they choose to dismantle. Within the social hierarchy of the companions, Ayla the Huntress and Shaw maintain a partnership that is established as more than a professional alliance between members of the Circle. While navigating the living quarters of Jorvaska, the player can witness several scripted interactions that hint at a secret affair. Even the Harbinger, Codlac Whitebane, explicitly addresses the matter in his journals and dialogue, noting his disapproval of their closeness and its potential to distract from the guild's core values. This romantic subtext offers a mechanical and narrative explanation for Ayla's unique stance on lycanthropy. While the other members of the Circle eventually seek to cleanse their souls to ensure entry to Sovngarde, Ayla is the only individual who categorically refuses the cure. Because Shaw is killed by the Silver Hand early in the questline while still possessing the beast blood, his soul is permanently claimed by the Daedric Prince, Hersign. By retaining her lycanthropy, Ayla ensures that her own soul will be sent to the hunting grounds upon her death, allowing her to reunite with Shaw in the afterlife. Her devotion to the old ways is in reality a refusal to accept an eternity apart from her partner. Throughout the province, players can discover 5 unique collectible items: a bee, a butterfly, a dragonfly, a firefly, and a moth, each trapped within a glass jar. While they appear to be simple decorative clutter, these items become the center of one of the most elaborate conspiracy theories in the game's history. The intrigue lies not within the insects themselves, but in the cryptic runes etched into the underside of the wooden lids. For years, the community meticulously translated these symbols from Dovasol and attempted to correlate them with the specific geographic coordinates on the world map. The prevailing theory suggested that the jars were components of a massive province-wide transmutation ritual. When the locations of the 5 jars are plotted on the map, they form a near-perfect pentagram. Theorists believed that placing the jars on these specific points would trigger a catastrophic event or summon a specific Daedric entity. Some lore enthusiasts even link the symbols to the Great Collapse of Winterhold, suggesting the jars were remnants of a failed magical experiment. The technical reality, however, is a classic example of orphaned content. During the development process, a designer created these unique assets as part of a complex side quest that was ultimately scrapped due to time constraints or design shifts. Because the jars were already integrated into the world space, they were left in the game as an environmental flavor. Frostflow Lighthouse, situated on the frozen coastline between Dawnstar and Winterhold, serves as one of the most prominent examples of environmental storytelling in the game. Upon entry, the player is met with a scene of absolute violence. The corpse of a red-garbed woman and a trail of blood leading into a derelict living space. Unlike many locations where the threat is immediate and obvious, Frostflow requires the player to reconstruct a tragedy through 4 distinct journals left behind by the Habt family. These records detail the family's optimism in purchasing the lighthouse, followed by a slow descent into terror as they heard unexplained scratching beneath the floorboards, which was initially dismissed as skeevers, but eventually revealed to be a Falmer incursion. The technical conclusion of this mystery is the quest Frostflow Abyss, which leads the player into a massive subterranean hive beneath the lighthouse. The player eventually recovers the remains of the father, Habd, from the stomach of a Chorus Reaper. While the narrative is bleak, it offers a unique mechanical incentive. By carrying Habd's remains to the top of the lighthouse and placing them within the signal fire, the player is granted a permanent active effect called Sailor's Repose. This buff increases the effectiveness of all healing spells by 10%. Chill Rend is a unique glass sword and the signature weapon of Mercer Frey, the leader of the Thieves Guild. While it shares the base geometry of a standard glass blade, it is visually distinguished by a translucent blade, ice-colored texture, and a unique ambient sound effect that triggers upon being drawn. Beyond its aesthetics, Chill Rend is widely regarded as one of the most powerful melee weapons in the game due to its dual effect enchantment, which delivers significant frost damage and a 25% chance to paralyze the target for 2 seconds. Its statistics, specifically its base damage, the magnitude of its frost enchantment, and the duration of its paralysis, are fixed based on the player's character level at the moment they first enter Mercer Frey's residence, Riftweald Manor. To obtain the most potent iteration of the blade, which deals 30 points of frost damage and surpasses the base damage of a Daedric sword, a player must delay their entry into the manor until they reach level 46 or higher. The paralysis effect is particularly viable in high difficulty combat, as it can effectively stun-lock enemies, rendering them unable to retaliate. The sword is secured within an expert-level display case in the hidden basement of the manor. Windshear is a unique scimitar that can only be acquired during the final stage of the Dark Brotherhood questline, Hail Sithis. The weapon is not found in a chest or on a corpse. Instead, it is embedded into the very tip of the bowsprit of Kataria, the Emperor's personal vessel. Because of its precarious placement, many players overlook it entirely while navigating the ship's exterior. Mechanically, Windshear is widely considered the most broken melee weapon in the game due to an oversight in its enchantment script. The weapon possesses a unique property where bash attacks have a chance to paralyze the opponent, but its primary power is its 100% stagger rate. In the Skyrim combat engine, most weapons require a power attack or a specific perk to stagger an enemy, but Windshear triggers a stagger effect on every single standard hit. This creates an exploit known as stun locking. By continuously attacking, the player prevents the enemy NPC from ever recovering their combat stance. This effectively disables the AI's ability to block, move, or retaliate, regardless of the enemy's level or health pool. It is particularly effective against high-profile bosses and dragons, as it bypasses standard combat's difficulty by rendering the opponent completely immobile until their health is depleted. The free training exploit is a prominent mechanical loophole involving NPCs who serve as both skill trainers and potential followers. Under normal circumstances, skill training is designed as a significant economic drain. The cost per level increases substantially as the player's proficiency grows, acting as a gold sink to balance the game's economy. However, the game's inventory logic treats the gold paid for training as a physical item added to the NPC's personal inventory rather than deleting it from the game world. To execute this exploit, the player must first recruit a trainer as an active follower. The most common candidate is Vendyr in Riverwood, who provides archery training up to level 50. After paying for the maximum of 5 training sessions allowed per level, the player can simply open the follower's inventory through the "I need to trade some things with you" dialog option. The gold previously paid for the training is visible in the trainer's inventory, allowing the player to take it back without a stolen flag or any negative repercussions. This creates a recursive loop where the player can reach level 50 in a specific skill at 0 net costs, while simultaneously gaining character levels that provide perk points. While this interaction remains functional in all official versions of the game, it is frequently disabled by community-made patches, which categorize the behavior as a fundamental oversight in the game's economic balance. Maven Blackbriar is portrayed as the de facto ruler of Riften, often using the threat of the Dark Brotherhood to maintain her grip on the city's commerce and politics. While many NPCs view her claims as empty intimidation, a secret located within her own home confirms her lethal connections. In a master-locked room in the basement of Blackbriar Manor, the player can find the grisly remains of a performed Black Sacrament, the forbidden ritual used to summon an assassin. The ritual site involves a meticulously arranged collection of skeletal remains, a human heart, and a letter written by Maven herself. The target mentioned in the letter is Christoph Barthélemy, a former associate who supposedly betrayed Maven in a business deal. This discovery validates Maven's dialogue throughout the game. When she threatens to send for the Brotherhood, she isn't making an idle threat. She has the resources, the knowledge, and the lack of morality required to engage with the province's most feared assassins. From a narrative perspective, this room is one of the few places in Skyrim where the game's untouchable political elite is shown to be just as depraved as the criminals they claim to despise. Lord Tusk is a unique named Hawker boss found on Hawker Island, a small landmass located off the eastern coast of Solstheim in the Dragonborn DLC. While standard Hawkers are common throughout the northern reaches of Skyrim, Lord Tusk is distinguished by his immense physical scale, appearing significantly larger than any other specimen of his kind. The mass of his power is framed by the environment in which he resides. The island is littered with the corpses of Reaver bandits, suggesting that Lord Tusk and his pack successfully repelled an attempted pirate occupation. Near the center of the island, the player can find the corpse of an NPC named Seyden, alongside Seyden's journal, which chronicles the Reavers' growing terror as they realize the Hawkers were far more aggressive and organized than they anticipated. Mechanically, Lord Tusk serves as an overworld mini-boss. He possesses a larger health pool and higher damage output than standard Hawkers, making him a legitimate threat to lower-level players. One of the primary rewards for reaching his lair is a collection of bones and skulls that resembles a primitive throne. This is the unique weapon Hawksbane. This steel mace is found on Seyden's body and features a specific enchantment that deals an additional 20 points of damage to Hawkers. Furthermore, the island contains a boss-level loot chest and a hidden East Empire Company strongbox located underwater nearby. Following the relocation of the Dark Brotherhood to the Dawnstar Sanctuary, the player has the option to renovate the facility through Delvin Mallory of the Thieves Guild. One of the most expensive upgrades, costing 5,000 gold, is the Torture Chamber. Unlike other home improvements that serve purely aesthetic or crafting purposes, this chamber is unique as it contains shackled prisoners for torture. These NPCs serve as informants for hidden treasure caches scattered across the province. By interacting with each prisoner, which involves physically striking them until their dialogue changes from pleas of mercy to the disclosure of information, the player can trigger 4 unique Hidden Wealth miscellaneous quests. Each victim reveals the location of a specific stash containing approximately 1,000 to 2,000 gold worth of loot, typically hidden in hollowed-out tree stumps or under unremarkable rocks near major cities like Windhelm or Riften. Once a prisoner reveals a location, a physical container is spawned in the world that did not exist previously. Sabjorn, the owner of the Honing Brew meadery near Whiterun, is positioned as the primary commercial rival to Maven Blackbriar. Throughout the early stages of the Thieves Guild questline, he is vocal about the superiority of his own product and his disdain for the Blackbriar brand, which he characterizes as inferior. However, the game's environmental storytelling reveals that this public rivalry is partially a facade. In Sabjorn's private quarters on the upper floor of the meadery, a single bottle of Blackbriar Reserve, which is an expensive high-quality variant of his rival's mead, is hidden specifically under his bed frame. The placement of this item is significant. It is not displayed on a shelf or kept in a pantry as a professional sample or a business reference. Its concealment suggests a personal indulgence that Sabjorn intends to keep strictly private. This detail serves as a layer of narrative irony, highlighting the Maven's influence and the quality of her product are so pervasive that even their most direct competitors secretly prefer it over their own stock. This discovery foreshadows the eventual outcome of the Dampened Spirits quest, where Sabjorn is arrested and his meadery is forcefully rebranded as Blackbriar Meadery West. Silver weapons, comprising the Silver Sword and the Silver Greatsword, occupy a unique mechanical niche in the game's combat system. Unlike standard enchanted items that display their effects within the user's interface, silver weapons utilize a hidden internal script that applies a flat 20 points damage bonus to any entity flagged as undead or lycanthrope. This classification includes Draugr, vampires, skeletons, and werewolves. Because this bonus is calculated independently of the weapon's base damage, it remains invisible on the item's stat card, leading many players to underestimate its actual lethality during early game exploration of Nordic ruins. A significant advantage of these weapons is their compatibility with the enchanting skill. A player can apply elemental or soul-trapping enchantment to a silver blade without overwriting its innate anti-undead property. This allows for the stacking of damage types. For instance, applying a fire enchantment to a silver sword creates a highly specialized tool for hunting vampires who already possess a natural weakness to flame. By combining the hidden silver bonus with active enchantments, these weapons can outperform higher tier materials like elven or glass when used against the appropriate targets. However, this effectiveness is balanced by a technical limitation within the smithing system. In the unpatched base game, silver weapons are not included in any smithing per category, meaning they cannot be refined or improved at a grindstone. This lack of scalability causes them to eventually fall behind ebony or daedric weaponry in terms of raw damage output as the player reaches higher levels. In the rugged terrain of the Reach, specifically near the Stone Bridge spanning the river south of Hagrock Redoubt, the game features a direct environmental tribute to the classic Norwegian fairy tale, Three Billy Goats Gruff. Upon approaching this location for the first time, players can observe three goats of varying sizes attempting to cross the bridge. If the player investigates the area beneath the structure, they will find the corpse of a bridge troll lying in the water. This encounter is a static Easter egg designed to reward environmental exploration. Unlike standard trolls, which are highly aggressive and often function as level-gated obstacles, this specific troll is scripted to be dead upon the player's arrival. This suggests that the three billy goats have already successfully defeated or bypassed the creature before the player entered the cell. It serves as a rare instance of literal folklore being integrated into the game's world building, providing a brief moment of levity within the otherwise bleak and dangerous landscape of the Reach. The dialogue system in Skyrim is built around animation triggers that often force the player to wade through lengthy narrative exchanges. While these sequences are designed to be mandatory, they can be bypassed by using the game's collision physics. When a player character sprints directly into an NPC, the engine calculates a physical impact that causes the NPC to stagger. Since the delivery of dialogue lines is tied to the character's standing animation, this stagger interrupts the script. This forces the AI to skip the current line of dialogue and move to the next one, or in some cases, end the conversation entirely. This method is a common tool for reducing downtime during quests with slow-speaking characters. By timing the collision to happen at the start of a new sentence, a player can quickly push an NPC through their entire monologue. While this technique cannot skip scenes where the player's movements is completely disabled by the game, it is a consistent mechanical oversight that allows for faster progression. Helga, the proprietor of Helga's bunkhouse in Riften, presents herself as a devout follower of Dibella, the goddess of beauty and love. While the public areas of her establishment are standard, her private bedroom suggests that it was made with a purpose for far more than sleeping. The room is littered with items that imply a lifestyle far more provocative than the typical NPC. Most notably, a pair of shackles is mounted directly above her bed, and the bedside table frequently contains leather strips and a bottle of honey, which are widely interpreted by the community as makeshift restraints and lubricant. Further investigation into the room reveals the presence of a Falmer elixir, a potion marketed by Brian Yulf in the Riften market as a potent aphrodisiac and performance enhancer. The room also contains a Daedra heart, an ingredient often associated with dark rituals or intense physical vitality. These objects are not random clutter, they are deliberately placed to support the Caught Red-Handed quest, where the player must collect marks of Dibella from the various men Helga has seduced. This mechanical interaction confirms that the items in her room are direct reflections of her character's secret habits and her specific, highly literal interpretation of Dibellan worship. The level of detail in Helga's room is unique because it pushes the game's mature themes further than almost any other civilian interior. While Skyrim usually relies on subtle dialogue or journals to convey adult themes, this location uses physical assets to paint a clear picture of Helga's private life. The physics engine in Skyrim treats arrows and crossbow bolts as discrete physical projectiles rather than hit-scan calculations. These arrows are subject to gravity, velocity, and collision data throughout their entire flight path. This design choice enables a rare mechanical interaction where the player can physically intercept a projectile before it makes contact. By utilizing the slow time shout, the player reduces the world's movement speed to a fraction of its normal rate, causing incoming arrows to drift through the air with enough latency to be targeted by the game's interaction prompt. While in the slowed state, an arrow remains a collectible item. If a player possesses sufficient reflexes to track the projectile's trajectory, they can pick the arrow directly out of the sky and place it into their inventory. This action immediately nullifies the projectile's damage and collision, effectively disarming the attack in mid-fight. Ulfric's Stormcloak is defined by his commitment to the independence of Skyrim, a conviction that extends into his private hours within the Palace of the Kings in Windhelm. While he is typically seen debating strategy with Gelmar Stonefist, his character script includes a rare behavioral detail during his sleep cycle. If a player enters his private quarters while he is resting, there is a slight chance to hear him humming the melody of The Age of Oppression. This specific song is a pro-rebellion anthem performed by bards in Stormcloak-aligned holds, featuring lyrics that advocate for the removal of the Empire and the recognition of Ulfric as High King. This inclusion humming suggests that his mere presence as a patriotic leader of the Stormcloaks and the Nord is not just a political cosplay. He is doing this for the love of his people and for him to be crowned as the High King of Skyrim. By placing his interaction within the privacy of his sleeping quarters, the developers provided a glimpse into the internal life of the rebellion's leader, showing that his dedication to the cause remains constant even when he is away from the war room. Cicero's journals located within the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary offer a record of his career before his psyche fractured. In the first volume, he details a contract carried out in 4E187 against the Grand Champion of the Imperial Arena in Cyrodiil. At the time, Cicero was an operative for the Cheydinhal Sanctuary. To eliminate a target of such immense physical strength and public recognition, he discarded traditional stealth in favor of an elaborate psychological ruse. He spent weeks impersonating a starstruck fan purposefully mimicking the behavior of the infamous adoring fan who had trailed the champion of the previous era. This performance was a deliberate callback to the event of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, where the player is pursued by a similarly obsessive follower after winning the arena. In Cicero's version, he utilized this irritating persona to lower the champion's guard and gain his trust. By appearing harmless and devoted, he was eventually able to convince the warrior to accompany him into the Cyrodiil forest. Once they were isolated from witnesses and the protection of the city, Cicero dropped the act and slit the champion's throat. The journal entry concludes with Cicero noting that he left him for the bears, a cold dismissal of a man who was once the most celebrated fighter in the Empire. This revelation provides significant depth to Cicero's character. It demonstrates that his current eccentricities are not just a result of madness, but a natural evolution of a man who was once a master of social manipulation. Skyrim utilizes hidden developer rooms known as cells to manage assets that are required for complex multi-stage quests. One of the most specialized examples is the Thieves Guild holding cell. Unlike the well-known QA smoke testing room, which contains every item in the game, this specific location serves as a dedicated repository for the unique artifacts and quest-specific trophies associated with the Riften Thieves Guild. Accessing this room via console commands reveals a concentrated collection of the game's rarest items, including all 24 stones of Varenzia and various unique larceny targets like the Honing Brewed decanter and the model ship. These items are placed here by developers to facilitate scripted teleportation. When a player completes a quest objective, such as finding specific gems and returning it to Vex, the game engine does not always generate a new object. Instead, it frequently executes a command to move the existing physical reference from this holding cell directly into the display shelves of the Ragged Flagon cistern. The architectural choice is a functional necessity for the game's persistent reference system. By keeping quest-critical items in an isolated, non-respawning cell, the developers ensured that items cannot be accidentally destroyed, lost, or despawned by world reset timers before they are needed for a quest update. The Ebony Warrior serves as the ultimate benchmark for character progression, appearing only after the player reaches level 80. Unlike standard adversaries who are driven by factional loyalty or terrible aggression, this character is motivated by a state of existential completion. Upon meeting the Dragonborn in a major city, he reveals that he has completed every quest, defeated every worthy foe, and mastered every skill. He issues a challenge for a final duel at the Last Vigil, a remote location in the Velothi Mountains, explicitly stating that he seeks an honorable death to ensure his soul's passage to Sovngarde. Mechanically, the Ebony Warrior is one of the most formidable combatants in the game due to a combination of higher-tier perks and unique abilities. He possesses the Reflect Blows perk, which gives him a 10% chance to redirect the player's melee damage back at them, often resulting in an instant death for high-damage builds. Furthermore, he is the only non-Nord humanoid NPC in the base game and its expansions capable of utilizing Dragon Shouts, specifically Unrelenting Force and Disarm. His equipment is equally specialized, featuring a sword with a life-stealing enchantment and armor that grants 50% resistance to fire, frost, and shock damage, forcing the player to rely on a diverse tactical approach rather than raw physical or magical power. Although his final words upon defeat are, "At last, Sovngarde," he is technically a Redguard. According to established Elder Scrolls lore, the Redguard's afterlife is typically the Far Shores, while Sovngarde is reserved for the souls of Nords who die with honor. While players can visit Sovngarde during the main quest, the Ebony Warrior is never found among the heroes in the Hall of Valor. regardless of whether the player defeats him before or after their journey to the afterlife. This absence has led to significant community debate. It remains unclear whether he was rejected due to his heritage or if his omission was simply a technical oversight by the developers. Regardless, he remains to be the endgame experience of Skyrim, where only few people reach level 80 and even fewer manage to face him off and defeat him. The Necromage perk, located within the Restoration skill tree, is designed to increase the effectiveness of all spells and effects used against undead targets by 25%, while also extending their duration by 50%. While this was intended to be a specialized tool for hunting Draugr and vampires, it contains a significant mechanical loophole when the player character becomes a vampire. Because the game engine assigns the undead keyword to players afflicted with vampirism, the logic of the Necromage perk begins to treat the player as the target of its own bonuses. This interaction effectively applies a 25% multiplier to nearly every positive status effect, enchantment, and perk the player acquires. Because the game classifies most passive bonuses, including gear enchantments, potion effects, and even other skill perks, as spells, they all receive the Necromage boost. For example, the Antronak perk normally provides a 50% chance to absorb incoming spells. For a vampire with Necromage, this value increases to 62.5%. When combined with the Antronak stone, which is also boosted, it becomes possible for a player to reach 100% spell absorption, rendering them completely immune to all magical damage. The order of operation is critical for the exploit to function. A player must first contract vampirism and then select the Necromage perk for the game to correctly register the player as a valid undead target for future buffs. If a player acquires a perk or equips an enchanted item before obtaining Necromage, the bonus will not retroactively apply. This interaction is widely considered one of the most powerful hidden mechanics in the game, allowing for a level of character optimization that far exceeds the standard limits of the leveling system. While most interactions in Skyrim occur while the player is standing or moving through the world, the game features a specific trigger when the player character takes a seat at a tavern, stool, or bench. In many of the province's inns, sitting down shifts the player state from an active explorer to a patron, prompting a member of the waitstaff, such as a tavern wench or the innkeeper, to break their current patrol or idle animation. The NPC will physically navigate to the player's location and initiate a dialogue prompt to serve food or drink, simulating a realistic hospitality experience. This mechanic is a subtle piece of environmental immersion that many players overlook, as the common tendency is to sprint directly to a merchant to trade goods while standing. By forcing the AI to acknowledge the player's posture, the developers created a localized interaction that makes the taverns feel like functional social spaces. The Forsworn Briarhearts are elite warriors who have undergone a transformative ritual performed by Hagravins, during which their biological hearts are removed and replaced with a magically infused Briarheart seed. This lore-based transformation is integrated directly into the game's inventory system. While most players encounter these enemies in high-stakes combat, the game treats the Briarheart as a physical removable object within the NPC's inventory. If a player possesses a high enough pickpocket skill and approaches the Briarheart while undetected, the seed can be stolen. Removing the heart triggers an immediate death script, causing the warrior to collapse instantly as their life force is severed. This interaction bypasses standard combat mechanics like health pools and armor ratings, offering a specialized stealth solution to one of the most difficult enemies in the Reach. The Thieves Guild maintains a sophisticated non-verbal communication network throughout Skyrim's major cities using a series of etched symbols known as shadow marks. These runes are typically carved into door frames, barrels, or stone walls near the entrances of residences and businesses. Each mark serves as a coded instruction for guild members, indicating whether a building is a lucrative target, a safe house, or a location to be avoided entirely. For example, the loot sign signifies a wealthy interior worth the risk of entry, while the danger symbol warns of a formidable occupant or a trap. The Orcs, or Orisma, occupy a unique position in Tarielic history as a race of corrupted elves whose lineage is tied to a single catastrophic event in the Merithic era. Before they were the green-skinned pariahs of the Rothgarian Mountains, they were devout followers of the Trinimac, the most powerful of the Aldmeri ancestor gods. When the prophet Veleth attempted to lead a dissident group of elves out of Somerset, Trinimac intervened to stop them. He was then confronted by the Daedric prince Boethia, who sought to ensure the exodus continued. In the ensuing struggle, Boethia defeated and consumed Trinimac, a divine act that permanently altered the god's essence. The result of this encounter was the birth of Malakath, the Daedric prince of the spurned and the ostracized. This transformation was not limited to the deity. The followers of Trinimac who witnessed or were part of the event were instantly changed as well. Their skin turned a sallow green, and their features became porcine and tusked, reflecting the new spoiled state of their patron. There is significant theological debate in the game's lore regarding how literal the consumption of Trinimac actually was. Some ancient Chimeri texts describe it in highly graphic and scatological terms, suggesting that Malakath was literally excreted by Boethia. However, in later eras, Malakath himself was remarked that people tend to take these myths a bit too literally. The names of the primary deities within the Imperial Pantheon, the Eight Divines, are rooted in the real-world history of Bethesda's development team rather than purely fictional linguistics. During the creation of the Elder Scrolls Arena, 7 of the 8 original gods were named as tributes to the game's beta testers. For example, the dragon god of time, Akatosh, was named after a tester who used the alias, aka the Old Smog himself. This naming convention extends across the majority of the Pantheon. Arche was derived from the initials of tester RK, Robert Knightley, and Julianus was later named after Julian Lefay, a key figure in the early development of the franchise, often referred to as the father of the Elder Scrolls. Out of the original 8 deities, Kynareth stands as the sole exception. Her name was a complete original creation by the writers, specifically designed to fit the atmospheric and her religious tone. The mad god encountered in the Pelagius Wind of the Blue Palace is not the original Daedric prince of the same name, but likely the protagonist of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. This connection is based on the mantling process seen in the Shivering Isles expansion. In that narrative, the original Sheogorath, who was actually the Daedric Prince of Order, Jigalag, cursed into a state of madness, successfully broke his cycle and returned to his true form. To ensure the Shivering Isles remained stable, the hero of Kvatch assumed the title, the staff, and the metaphysical identity of the Mad God. During the Mind of Madness quest in Skyrim, Sheogorath provides several lines of dialogue that serve as evidence for this theory. He mentions being present for the whole sordid affair of the Oblivion Crisis, specifically referencing Martin Septim's transformation, a severed head referencing the Dark Brotherhood questline, and a fox, which is likely referencing the Grey Fox of the Thieves Guild. This narrative detail explains why the Sheogorath in Skyrim possesses such a vivid recollection of the events of Cyrodiil, while the original Prince of Madness would have been preoccupied with his transformation into Jigalak at the time. While the game avoids naming the previous protagonist to preserve player choice, these specific references confirm that the person sitting across from Pelagius III is the same individual who once saved the Empire from Mehrunes Dagon. Combat in Skyrim relies on a stamina bar that limits how often a player can use power attacks or shield bashes. Usually, once this bar hits 0, the player is forced to wait for it to refill before performing another heavy move. However, the vegetable soup consumable creates a loophole in this system. This soup, crafted from basic vegetables at a cooking pot, grants a passive effect that restores 1 point of stamina every second for a total of 12 minutes. The exploit works because the game only checks if you have at least 1 point of stamina to start a power attack. Even if the attack itself costs 50 points, the constant 1 point per second tick from the soup ensures your stamina pool is never at a true 0 for more than a fraction of a second. This allows a player to continuously spam heavy attacks or bashes without pause, effectively keeping an enemy staggered and unable to fight back. This mechanic essentially removes the need for stamina management during boss fights. While a single point of regeneration per second won't help you sprint across the map, it is enough to break the combat logic entirely. Because the recipe is easy to make and the effect lasts for such a long time, it remains one of the most reliable ways to handle high difficulty encounters without relying on high-level gear or magic. Despite the popular theory that the idea that taking an arrow to the knee is a Nordic slang term for marriage is actually a persistent internet myth. This interpretation suggests that the phrase refers to the act of kneeling for a proposal, but there is no historical or linguistic evidence in real-world Nordic culture or the game's internal lore to support it. In reality, the line was written by Bethesda's lead designer, Emil Pagliarulo, as a simple piece of flavor text. His goal was to provide the gods with a water story that explained why they had retired from a life of adventure to settle into the mundane duties of the City Watch. The phrase became a global phenomenon shortly after the game's release in 2011, leading fans to project deeper meanings onto what was essentially a random piece of world building. Bethesda's developers have since clarified in interviews that the line was intended to be literal. It portrays the world of Skyrim as a place where even the most capable heroes can be sidelined by simple injury. Master Neleth, the eccentric Telvanni wizard residing in the Mushroom Tower of Tel Mithrin on Solstheim, represents a rare direct link between the events of the Elder Scrolls III, Morrowind, and Skyrim. In the Third Era, Neleth was already an established councillor of House Telvanni, ruling from his vertical home of Tel Naga in the city of Sadrith Mora. His presence in the Dragonborn DLC, occurring over 200 years after the eruption of Red Mountain, highlights the immense longevity of high-level sorcerers within the Telvanni hierarchy. These mages utilize powerful restoration magic and arcane rituals to extend their lifespans far beyond the natural limits of the Merish races, allowing them to pursue research across centuries. Despite the passage of 2 centuries and the near-total destruction of his homeland, Neleth's personality remains remarkably consistent. He maintains the characteristic arrogance and detachment typical of his great house, viewing the political upheavals of Tamriel as more distractions from his study of Hearthstones and the Plains of Oblivion. His dialogue in Skyrim occasionally alludes to his past, including his interactions with the Nerevarine and his survival during the Red Year. Ash Spawn are formidable adversaries encountered on the island of Solstheim, characterized by their high resistance to fire and total immunity to poison. These creatures are animated from the volcanic ash of Red Mountain through the power of Hearthstones, making them exceptionally durable in standard physical combat. However, they possess a critical environmental weakness involving bodies of water. If an ash spawn is forced into deep water, typically by using the unrelenting force shout or a shield bash, they will perish instantly upon contact. For players, This provides a highly effective tactical solution for managing groups of ash spawn near the coastline of Solstheim, allowing for the removal of a high health target without the need for engaging into tedious combat. The Clear Skies Shout is primarily used as a utility to dispel inclement weather, such as rain, fog, or snowstorms, allowing for better visibility during travel. However, its influence extends beyond the immediate third-person perspective and affects the game's user interface. Because the world map in Skyrim is not a static 2D image, but a real-time 3D render of the game world from a high altitude, any changes made to the atmosphere in the physical world are reflected on the map screen. Using the shout effectively clears the heavy cloud cover that typically obscures large portions of the province when viewing the map. This interaction is particularly useful for players attempting to navigate the more mountainous regions of the Pale or Winterhold, where persistent fog can make identifying terrain features difficult. By clearing the sky before opening the map, the player gains a much sharper view of the landscape, including distant peaks and undiscovered landmarks. The significant Dunmer population found throughout eastern Skyrim is the direct consequence of the Red Year in 4E05, a cataclysmic event triggered when the celestial ministry, Ba Dao, plummeted into Vivek City. The resulting impact caused Red Mountain to erupt, laying waste to the province of Morrowind and initiating a mass exodus. Thousands of Dunmer fled westward across the Velothi Mountains into Skyrim, seeking asylum from the Ash and the subsequent Argonian invasion. This migration led to the transformation of Windhelm's Snow Quarter into the Grey Quarter, a localized ghetto where the refugees were permitted to settle. The legal and social status of these refugees was further solidified by the Decree of Monument, a document found at a landmark called Refugees' Rest near the Morrowind border. This decree, issued in 4E20, served as a formal recognition of the struggle faced by those fleeing their homeland and confirmed the High Knight offer of Solstheim as a permanent haven. The decree granted the Dunmer the right to live untethered to any Thane or hold, effectively allowing them a degree of self-governance and the freedom to practice their traditional worship of the three good Daedra. By the time of the Dragonborn's arrival in 4E201, the Dunmer of Windhelm remained largely unintegrated, who are still facing open hostility from the local Nord population. The internal game files for the Dawnguard expansion contain scripts and dialogue tags indicating that Serena was originally considered for a marriage path. Within the code, references to a romantic follower framework suggested that the developers experimented with making her eligible for the standard marriage mechanic used by other NPCs. Despite these technical remnants, the option was removed before the final release, making Serena one of the few high-detail followers who remain strictly a platonic companion throughout the game. Narratively, the decision to omit this option likely stems from her complex and traumatic history as a daughter of Cold Harbor. Her backstory involves a ritualistic encounter with the Daedric prince Molag Bal, and her arc is centered on reclaiming her agency after centuries of manipulation by her family. Allowing the player to marry her through the game's standard relatively simple marriage system would have potentially undermined the weight of her personal narrative and her expressed discomfort with religious institutions like the Temple of Mara. The Notched Pickaxe is a unique tool and weapon found at the absolute summit of the Throat of the World, embedded in an ore vein near the peak's highest reachable point. This item is the most direct Easter egg in the game, serving as a tribute to Marcus Notch Persson, the creator of Minecraft. The name is a play on Notch's handle, while the pickaxe itself is the primary tool used in his game. This inclusion was reportedly a gesture of goodwill from Bethesda, following a 2011 legal dispute between ZeniMax and Mojang over a trademark for the word scrolls. Beyond its status as a reference, the notched pickaxe possesses specific enchantments that make it useful for crafting focused builds. It grants the wielder a 5-point boost to their smithing skill and inflicts 5 points of shock damage on hit. While its base damage is low compared to endgame weaponry, it is the only weapon in the game that provides a direct buff to the smithing attribute. This makes it a staple for players who want to maximize their gear improvements outside of traditional potions and apparel. The village of Ivarstead is home to one of the game's most enduring and unresolved mysteries, the disappearance of Vendyr, the sister of the local beggar Nafi. While the quest, The Straw That Broke, asks the player to locate her, the resolution provides more questions than answers. Vendyr's remains a skeleton, and alongside her is a satchel of alchemy ingredients which are found at the bottom of the river directly beneath the bridge leading out of town. This location contradicts the information provided by the innkeeper Wilhelm, who claims she went missing while gathering ingredients on a distant island near Geirmund's Hall. Several pieces of evidence suggest that Vendyr's death was not a simple accident. The proximity of her body to the village suggests she never made it to the island Wilhelm mentioned, implying he may have intentionally misled both Nafi and the player. This suspicion is compounded by the fact that the Dark Brotherhood eventually issues a contract for Nafi's assassination. Some players theorize that Wilhelm is the client who performed the Black Sacrament, either to put Nafi out of his misery or to silence the only remaining member of a family that may have been targeted for their land or secrets. A notable technical anomaly adds weight to the theory of Wilhelm's involvement. If a player retrieves Vendyr's necklace and presents it to Wilhelm before talking to Nafi, a dialogue bug can occur where Wilhelm speaks using Nafi's unique, grief-stricken voice lines. While likely a script error, many lore enthusiasts interpret this as a remnant of cut content where Wilhelm was meant to have a much deeper, perhaps more sinister connection to the siblings. The lack of a definitive conclusion leaves the player to decide whether the family was the victim of a series of tragic accidents or a calculated effort to erase them from the Ivarstead entirely. But while all these facts are a part of the game, we need to understand that the technical reality here never quite captures the full sum of the experience. You can document every misplaced door and exploit every stamina loop, but the math still fails to explain the weight of the atmosphere. Knowing the mechanics doesn't explain the obsession. To understand why we keep coming back to the frozen roads, we have to look past the variables and find the heart of the province. It has been almost 15 years since the release of Skyrim, and still, nothing feels quite like it.